Now, in order to tackle binge drinking, it's been suggested that patients should undergo alcohol screening tests when they visit their GP. 10 questions will be asked of a patient, including how often do you have 6 drinks or more on one occasion, and how often have you had a feeling of guilt or remorse after drinking? Alex Dean, director of Big Brother Watch, which campaigns against intrusions into privacy and protecting people's liberties, says it's entirely inappropriate for a doctor to interrogate patients about how much they drink. It's none of their business, especially if a person is seeing them for something that's non-alcohol related. So, what do you think of this proposal? Does he have a point, or is it fair game for doctors to be able to pull up a patient on anything that is health-related and could be costing the NHS?
Well, exactly. And as you know, I'm married to the lovely Dr. Peter, but I haven't spoken to him about this, so this is not from the horse's mouth. This is just from me. But I think it's a very, very good idea to do this and completely appropriate, because alcohol is, after all, a drug. I mean, we don't think of it perhaps like that because it's socially acceptable, as is cigarette smoking, theoretically. But these are both drugs, and doctors ask about your cigarette habits, and I think it does make sense to me to ask about your drinking habits, because alcohol has a big effect, as we all know. I mean, that's why we drink it, on the rest of your system, but not necessarily a good effect. So it seems to me to make complete sense. But what worries me is that how are they going to ask all these questions in the 10-minute slot that they have to find out what's the matter with you?
I think one should have a responsibility themselves. You know, I know when I go out and have a night out with the girls, wherever, if I drink a little bit, the next day you look 10 years older. It has such an effect on you.
You'd think that'd stop you for a start.
Well, absolutely. But the point I'm also making is, I know in the next couple of years I'd love to have a baby. Oh. And if you are trying for a baby, it can affect your fertility. Yes. So I think you've got to have a responsibility to yourself as well, yes, to know that, you know, if you're wanting to achieve certain things, and really, you know, there's just unhealthy levels, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point, Claire. If a doctor's going to responsibly treat you, he has to be aware. If you're sat there saying, well, I'd like a baby soon, and he's fair game to question you about your lifestyle. But, Sherry, I know you've spoken in the past on the show about the fact that you did battle the bottle for a while. So, had you found yourself in the doctor's surgery and he'd said to you, look, Sherry, I need to ask you these 10 questions, would you have been open to that? Would you have been honest in response to his questions?
Well, first of all, I do think it's a good idea. Those questions are a good idea. But years ago, when I was under a lot of stress in my marriage, I did drink heavily, but I was in denial. Like, I'd hide bottles in big washing boxes.
Really?
You know, the big box. Yes,
I'd hide. Drink indoors on your own?
But I didn't believe I was. But I was, and because I just wanted to disappear. And so that was the way of disappearing for me, without anybody knowing. So, had I gone to the doctor and he'd have asked me those questions, I'd have gone, no. Because I would have been total denial and would have thought... And also, I would have been ashamed, and I would have been frightened to have said it, and I would have thought, I don't want anybody to know this.
But it's a guilty secret, isn't it?
It's a guilty secret, but it's confidential. He's your doctor. He's not going to tell anybody.
That's not the point, you see. Your mind isn't confidential. In your mind, you've gone out, you've told the world.
Yeah, but what also if he prescribed you something for what he thought was wrong with you, and if it had a bad reaction and you'd got worse? How would that doctor have felt?
No,
I know I'm speaking
you don't
as a
understand.
wife of one.
The shame of it is enough to try and make yourself believe you actually don't do what they're asking.
The first thing you've got to do is admit it yourself.
Yeah. But you may have found yourself... I mean, Leslie raised a really good point there. If he's prescribing drugs for one ailment and you're drinking, and that drink is going to work against that, then you're compromising the doctor, I guess. Yeah. But you're right. An alcoholic is somebody who is burdened with the shame of their illness, and it is an illness. Do you think...
See, I wasn't an alcoholic, and that's where you get it wrong, you see. You've got to treat that differently. That's something else. This is somebody who is drinking through stress, drinking too much, and that's a different help. And, you know, yes, a doctor can, but you need more than that.
No disrespect, but if you're hiding bottles in a washing basket and stuff...
Not anymore.
No, I know you're not anymore.
Yes, I know what you're saying, but I wasn't ever really drunk. I did it to hide me, to get away from the situation, because I didn't want to live at all.
You're in denial about
and so that's what I was doing. I wasn't drinking because I liked alcohol. I think that's your line. And if you've got a doctor now that would say, I think it's a brilliant idea. But you've got to be more than a doctor. You've got to be a therapist.
Well,
you've got
a psychologist.
And that's a very good point. OK, well, I'm glad to hear that you're not bashing the bottle.
Oh, hey!
Not quite like you used to anyway. There's been a few nights. OK, if you're splashing in the pool this summer...